Every empire needs fuel. Rome had gold. Britain had coal. America? America runs on something far more powerful and far more dangerous. Debt. Not the kind that breaks you, the kind that builds you. The kind that transforms a colony into a superpower, a crisis into an opportunity, a promise into the world's reserve currency. This is the story of how America learned to weaponize owing money, how borrowing became the engine of dominance, and how a nation that started $65 million in the hole now carries $35 trillion on its back and somehow still stands. But the ground is shifting. The interest alone costs more than the entire defense budget. The math is starting to whisper what no one wants to hear. What happens when the fuel runs out? Let's go back to where it all began, not with spreadsheets or central banks, but with blood. 1776. A nation fighting for its life doesn't have the luxury of balanced budgets. The Continental Congress needed soldiers, weapons, supplies. They had one option: borrow. $75 million, a staggering sum for a government that barely existed. France fronted most of it, betting on a rebellion that could weaken their British rivals. And it worked. America won its independence. But it also won something else, a national debt, a promise that would follow the Republic into every century that came after. Fast forward to 1860. The United States government owed just under $65 million. Manageable, quiet. Then came Fort Sumter. Then came the Civil War. By the time the cannons stopped firing, the debt had exploded to $2.7 billion. Brother against brother, state against state, all of it financed by borrowed money. Abraham Lincoln didn't just preserve the Union, he mortgaged it. War bonds flooded the market. Citizens were asked to lend their savings to save the country, and they did. This wasn't just economics, it was emotion, patriotism with a price tag. The government learned a lesson it would never forget. In moments of crisis, people will fund anything if you wrap it in the flag. World War I, World War II, each conflict pushed the debt higher, but the Second World War was different. This wasn't just borrowing to fight, it was borrowing to reshape the entire global order. By 1946, American debt hit 106% of GDP, the highest it had ever been. The economy was bleeding. The Treasury was stretched to breaking. But something strange happened next. Instead of collapsing, America soared. 1944. Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. Delegates from 44 nations gathered in a hotel to design the financial architecture of the post-war world. And at the center of it all, the American dollar. No longer tied to gold in practical terms, no longer just another currency, the dollar became the global reserve, the language of international trade, the foundation of every central bank's vault. This was the deal. If you wanted to do business in the modern world, you did it in dollars, which meant every nation on earth needed to hold American currency, which meant every nation on earth was, in a sense, funding America's debt. It was a structural advantage no empire in history had ever possessed. Rome couldn't export its debt to Gaul. Britain couldn't make India hold pounds in reserve at this scale. But America could borrow at lower rates than anyone else, because the whole world needed its money to function. And so even as the debt sat at over 100% of GDP, the economy didn't buckle. It grew. Post-war industrial expansion, the GI Bill, highways, suburbs, innovation, growth outpaced the borrowing. Inflation quietly eroded the real value of what was owed. By 1974, the debt had fallen to just 23% of GDP. America had grown out of its debt, not by paying it off, but by building around it, by making the economy so large, so dynamic, that the old numbers became footnotes. It was a magic trick, and for a generation, it looked like policy genius. But here's the thing about magic tricks. They only work if no one asks how. 2001, September 11th, the towers fall, and with them, the last remnants of fiscal restraint. Wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Tax cuts during wartime, something almost no nation had ever attempted. The logic was simple. We can afford it. We're America. The debt will take care of itself. It didn't. 2008, the financial system implodes. Banks too big to fail. A housing market built on fraud. The government steps in with bailouts, stimulus packages, emergency measures. The Federal Reserve launches something called quantitative easing, a polite term for printing money and buying the government's own debt. Trillions of dollars flood the system. The Fed's balance sheet swells, and the line between the central bank and the Treasury starts to blur. This wasn't technically printing money to fund the government, but it was close enough that economists started whispering about monetary financing. The debt kept climbing. 10 trillion, 15 trillion, 20 trillion. Then came 2020. A virus shuts down the world. The economy freezes. Congress passes stimulus after stimulus, checks to citizens, loans to businesses, support for hospitals, states, entire industries on the brink. The debt explodes past $30 trillion. And then, in 2024, something shifts. The bill comes due. Not the debt itself, but the interest. $1.1 trillion. That's what America paid just in interest in fiscal year 2024. Not paying down the debt, not funding programs, just servicing what's already owed. To put that into perspective, that's more than the country spends on national defense, more than it spends on veterans affairs, education, and transportation combined. Interest has become one of the largest line items in the federal budget, a ghost expense, money vanishing into the void of past promises. $35.5 trillion, that's the total debt as of September 2024. It's a number so large it stops meaning anything until you realize what it represents. Every road not built, every program not funded, every choice narrowed by the weight of what was borrowed decades ago. The debt isn't just a ledger entry, it's a constraint on the future, a mortgage on possibility itself. The Congressional Budget Office is clear. Under current policy, debt held by the public will exceed 100% of GDP by the late 2020s. The International Monetary Fund goes further, projecting it could hit 125% in 2025 and 143% by the end of the decade. We're approaching the World War II peak again, but this time there's no post-war boom waiting on the other side, no Bretton Woods moment to reset the global game. The world is more indebted than ever. The IMF estimates global government debt will hit 100% of world GDP by 2029. America isn't unique anymore. It's just early. Some argue this is fine, that debt doesn't matter as long as you can service it, as long as the economy grows faster than the interest compounds, as long as the dollar remains the reserve currency and the world keeps lending. but others see the cracks forming. Rising interest rates mean higher costs to roll over owed debt. Political gridlock means no consensus on cutting spending or raising revenue. And every year, more of the budget gets consumed by interest, squeezing out everything else. There's a term for this: fiscal trap. When interest grows faster than your ability to pay it, and every solution makes the problem worse. Cut spending, and you slow growth, which makes the debt ratio higher. Raise taxes, same outcome. Print money, and you risk inflation, which makes creditors nervous and pushes rates even higher. It's a slow tightening, and once it starts, it's very hard to stop. But here's the thing: history isn't math, it's choice. America reduced its debt from 106% of GDP to 23% once before. It did so through growth, through inflation, through policy decisions that prioritized the long term over the next election cycle. It wasn't inevitable, it was chosen. Which means the current trajectory isn't fate either. The question isn't whether America can manage its debt, it's whether it will. Whether the political system can make hard decisions before the market makes them for it. Whether the next generation will inherit an economy constrained by the past or liberated by a new set of choices. Because here's the uncomfortable truth: debt bought America everything. The Revolution, the Civil War victory, World War II, the interstate highway system, the space program, the internet. Every leap forward was financed, at least in part, by borrowed money. Debt isn't inherently evil, it's a tool, and tools can build or destroy, depending on how you use them. Right now, America is using it to tread water, to fund operations without the political pain of raising taxes or cutting programs, to avoid choices. And that's the most dangerous use of all. $35 trillion, $1 trillion in interest every year, a reserve currency status that's no longer guaranteed, a global system built on American borrowing that's starting to crack under its own weight. This is where we are. The fuel that powered the empire is still burning, but the tank is running low, and no one's quite sure what happens when it hits empty. Maybe America finds a way to grow out of it again. Maybe innovation and productivity create another boom that makes today's debt look quaint. Maybe the system adapts, the dollar holds, and this becomes just another chapter in the long story of American resilience. Or maybe we're watching the slow unraveling of something that seemed permanent, the moment when the math finally catches up to the myth. Either way, the story isn't over. It's just entering its most dangerous act. If this made you think, subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to see it, because the decisions made in the next few years won't just echo, they'll define whether America's next century is built on strength or borrowed time. The clock is ticking, and the debt, it never sleeps.